Let's explore the secret to overcoming the stresses inherent in the career of a yoga teacher. A handful of centuries ago, the great Tibetan yogi Paltrul Rinpoche warned, a sign that is painfully obvious. Not everyone is wise, but many are clever. Not everyone is loving, but many are cruel. Not everyone is honest, but many are deceitful. Therefore, as one who has devoted their time and energy and talents to mastering the art and science of yoga, please be aware that there is going to be a demographic of people who are happy to exploit you. Exploit your talent, your skill, your expertise, and will do whatever they can to cheat you, to make applying your skill set impossible. They will happily treat you as a disposable commodity, happy to flush you away after they feel your services are no longer necessary and that you're ready to be replaced by another bright-eyed and bushy-tailed graduate of a yoga teacher training program. Regardless of how much experience and intelligence and spirituality you have trained in, there's always going to be some people who will commodify you and exploit you. I love the story of Tubten Tashi. He was a member of a more fear-oriented sect of Buddhist monks at the time of the Chinese invasion of Tibet. And like many monks, he fled. He got separated, and he wound up in a country whose language he did not know. He therefore did not know how he would beg, which was how monks support themselves. And so he just reconciled himself to the potential that he was going to starve to death in a handful of weeks. So he found a disused hunter's cabin and practiced, meditated and chanted, and waited for what he felt would be the inevitable. Some hunters returned to the hunting cabin and saw him there, and he did his best to explain to them. They could tell by the way he was dressed that he was a monk, and they could tell by his behavior and by his gauntness that he was there to practice until the inevitable. The hunters left their cabin and returned to the local village, with their the prey animals that they had successfully hunted. And they let it be known that there was a holy man from a different country in their cabin. The news fell upon the ears of an old widow who was troubled by nightmares, and who was a polyglot who spoke several languages, including that monk's dialect of Tibetan. She approached the hunter's cabin in an effort to receive counseling from the monk. And although the monk had been raised to be in a very, very fundamentalist sect, in a moment of centered spontaneity, he asked her out of the blue before he even greeted her, "Have you been having nightmares?" That question blew that widow's mind. And not only did she receive counseling from Tubten Tashi, but she spread the word. And He, from that point on, had a regular flow of students and patrons to learn from his teachings and support him corporeally. When one of my teachers left Tibet, escaped Tibet, on his way to India, he visited Thupten Tashi, who explained to him that once we let go of the tyranny of greed, the tyranny of fear, it is impossible for us to starve. Now, I was raised with a profound sense of lack and scarcity. I was conditioned for scarcity and fear. And that story has always been very comforting to me. Now, clearly, I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm a meditation teacher. But as any yoga teacher knows, yoga teachers and meditations share common area, not unlike an overlapping Venn diagram. And so the lesson from Thupten Tashi is meditate, let go, ply your skill set with love. To put it in American parlance, the universe is vast and humans are small, and as such, it is impossible for us to outgive the universe. Therefore, it is safe to apply our skill set with love and with naivete and with innocence. We are safe, provided that we regularly are vulnerable to what's going on inside of us and that we process it with meditation. Before I explain the actual method of meditation, allow me to remind you of what you probably already know. In our great enthusiasm to share our skill set with others, and in others' great enthusiasm to exploit our knowledge and expertise, we can find ourselves in a situation where we're spending so much time giving others, we forget to apply the teachings to ourselves. And I cannot stress strongly enough how important it is to at least once or twice a day practice what you preach. I'm not talking about hypocrisy. I'm talking about sustainability. Go to someplace pretty and do a yoga sadhana with asana and meditation, dhyana, and this will sustain you regardless of the kindness and cruelty with those you interface with. But now, as promised, let's return to the essence of mindfulness meditation and its neuroscientific underpinnings. Every time we breathe in, we inadvertently automatically access our sympathetic nervous system. It has not evolved for active concentration. Instead, it evolved to merely perceive, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. And as such, we can notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotion, intention, thoughts, memory, and imaginings. What then are we to do with that which we notice? We meditate upon it. And how do we do that? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved for both physical relaxation as well as mental release. In fact, it could be explained that Physical relaxation is the carrier wave upon which mental release surfs, hangs ten, and shouts cowabunga. I would very much like to do a short chant and a long meditation with you in approximately 1 minute from now. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of patrons on Patreon. If you like Star Wars and you wish to meditate as profoundly as Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And now for a bit of good news. If at any point during our practice session you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, do not hesitate, do not be shy. Immediately type your question in great detail in the chat window. Now, if you're watching on your laptop, it'll be on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you're watching on your smartphone, it'll be on the bottom part of your screen. This practice text, or sadhana, if you're fancy, is my adaptation of the Anapanasati Sutta, which was written down approximately 500 years after the Buddha died. So the margin of error is great. The test of these teachings is not blind faith, and it's not tradition. The test of these teachings are the effects we generate when we apply these teachings. That is why, after decades of study and practice, I have adapted these teachings in a way to make them as accessible and as transformative for everyday folk just like me and you. Therefore, I've named this text Secular Mindfulness Meditation and Contemplation. Just as an Olympic sprint begins with a starter's pistol and ends with a finish line, I find it useful, especially for my students, to begin and end each meditation session with a short but sweet chant of love. Not devotion, but love. Devotion is vertical, us towards a real or imagined celestial entity. Horizontal is just love for our fellow sentient creatures. Please chant with me. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hate, engraving, and clinging, by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. So, whether the Buddha was real or archetypical, the efficacy of his example and instructions and some of his students is so profound that metaphorically, the three of them have been known as wish-fulfilling jewels. That's going to make more sense when we chant the concise version of the same two thoughts. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. Now, what follows next is completely optional, but I really like to perform Buddha bowing. Now, because of physical disabilities on my part, I really cannot do traditional Tibetan-style Buddha bowing. But what I can do is geriatric step back squat thrusts. May I liberate? Oopsie, do I hit myself on the head? May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the three jewels. Now that is invigorating. Do you remember? If at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or their application, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. In the Anapanasati discourse attributed to the Buddha, it is explained that full enlightenment can be attained by mastering these 16 exercises, which divide evenly into 4 sets of 4. We begin with Kaya Sati's only set of 4 preliminary meditations that center our bodies. Kaya means body, Sati means mindfulness. At the top of each page, we see a homework assignment. And the assumption is made with the homework assignment that one is going to take one is going to take 16 weeks to develop, to acclimate to a 60-minute practice, starting with at the rate of about 3.5 minutes a week. So the first week it'll be about 3.5 minutes practiced every 12 hours. And then the second week we'll practice 2 exercises. And then the third week we'll practice 3 exercises. And the fourth week we'll practice 4 exercises, and so forth, until gently, incrementally, your body and your mind and the people in your life have grown accustomed to your practice. We begin with the first of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate our relaxingly longer, gentle exhalations. The Buddha taught of 7 enlightenment factors, and mindfulness is the first. And mindfulness just means noticing, not actively concentrating, merely noticing, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. So for the next 2 exercises, we're going to play with rhetorical questions. Very short, only 2 words long. How long? We're not trying to actively influence the depth or duration of our breathing. We're simply silently and mentally reciting these 2 words in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation. On the right hand of the screen, you'll notice it reads 2 sets of 16 rounds, which is a very important piece of information if you're practicing by yourself. If you're practicing with me, you'll notice that I tend to count faster than you because I'm doing all this talking. I count 16 rounds on the 4 fingers of my left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I count sets on my right hand. So for my first collection of 2 sets, I'll rest the great knuckle at the base of my left little finger upon the tip of my right little finger, and I'll rest these 2 hands in my lap. While I'm counting my first set, I'll rest the tip of my right thumb upon the lower set of creases of my right little finger. When I'm counting the second set, I will advance the thumb to one of the creases. And I'll do that as I'm progressing through the 4 exercises of this first set of 4. I like to advance the left thumb during each inhalation. And once again, this is not mandatory, but it's a useful skill to acquire. We live in what the Chinese curse describes as interesting times. We live in times where people are arrested for peacefully protesting the murder of innocents. One of my students many years ago found himself in jail, and he confided with me that he was very grateful that he had, over the months, accidentally memorized these techniques and was not reliant upon paraphernalia like mala. He could just practice with his hands in the corner of the jail cell, unmolested by others. Let's meditate. We come to the second of centerings for physical preliminary practices where we mindfully notice and even investigate the coalescence of our invigorating, sharper inhalations. There are 4 exercises of the 16 which are subtly invigorating. And invigoration is the third enlightenment factor. As we breathe in, we continue to recite how, but this time as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite short. Once again, we're not trying to control the shallowness or brevity of our breath. We're simply silently and mentally reciting words in harmony with our inhalation, exhalation, and relaxation. I tend to check for messages approximately once every 4 minutes. So if it takes a few minutes till I notice your question, please do not take it personally. We come to the third of centerings for physical preliminary practices where we allow our minds to mindfully notice and even investigate our bodies. And you'll notice that in addition to the painting of Ahsoka Tano, there appears to be 2 variations on the theme of tantric sex. You will find pages like this sporadically through this text, inferring that the technique featured on that page is applicable to the tantric arts. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the sensory verb feel. Now, we do not need to actively, and as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form, which functions as a synonym for body. We do not need to actively study our form because, as I've mentioned previously, every time we breathe in, thanks to our sympathetic nervous system, we involuntarily notice, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. So we don't have to force it. We are playing with these words to instruct our intention to be in greater harmony with our autonomic nervous system. We come to the fourth of centerings for physical preliminary practices, where we allow our bodies to tranquilly relax. This tranquility is the fifth enlightenment factor. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb calm. This is not an affirmation. We're not lying to ourselves. We're not wishing that we're calm. We're simply giving an instruction to our intention. But here's the irony. We are already wired, thanks to our parasympathetic nervous system, to automatically relax during each exhalation. So we're not forcing it, we're allowing it. We continue with Vedana Sati's Setta 4 jhana meditations that center our feelings. Sati means mindfulness. Vedana refers to feelings. Although that's kind of a misnomer because in this context, these 4 exercises serve as a bit of a bridge between the physical and the mental. Jhana in this context refers to centering. And despite the many of the fantasies of patriarchy, this is not an elite practice for special people. This is for everybody. The Buddha promised that practicing these techniques, we could master his path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. This isn't every person's practice. We begin with the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the first jhana's invigorating, blissful joy. This is our first joy exercise, joy being the 4th enlightenment factor. And this is our second invigorating practice. This blissful joy flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes towards our bodies of flesh, blood, and bone. This is, by the way, our final body-oriented meditation for this session. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb green. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. This is our 3rd time using the noun form. Now, when we say grin, we don't mean something scary like a sideshow clown. We mean something subtle and nuanced like Mona Lisa. In the morning, when it's dark 100 and my alarm goes off, this is my go-to meditation. We continue with the second of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the second jhana's peaceful joy that flows once again from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes towards our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. And you'll notice that we're using the term thoughts as an umbrella term. As we breathe in, again, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. This time as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun thoughts, which function as an umbrella. We continue with the third of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices, where we savor the third jhana's contentment, which is an attribute very much elusive in cultures dominated by late-stage capitalism. We're going to access this latent contentment by mindfully noticing, investigating, and even coalescing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. So coalescing is what happens automatically as the air coalesces within our lungs during our inhalation, where we silently and mentally repeat the sensory verb feel. We continue with the fourth of four feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the fourth jhana's neutrality, where we first taste of the midpoint between pushing and pulling by allowing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining to tranquilly relax. And as we mentioned, this takes place on autopilot during our exhalation due to our due to our parasympathetic nervous system. We continue with Chitta Sati's second set of 4 jhana meditations that center our mind. Chitta translates as mind. We begin with the first of 4 mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the 5th jhana's metaphoric sphere of infinite spaciousness by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our mind's ability to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. And again, where you're using a noun such as mind as an umbrella term. We return to the sensory verb feel as we breathe in. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. We continue with the second of 4 mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the 6 jhanas and metaphoric sphere of infinite awareness, which we generate by allowing our mind to invigoratingly gladden as towards it we gently smile once again. From the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes. This is the third and final grinning meditation of the 16 exercises. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. We come to the third of 4 mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the 7th jhana's metaphoric sphere of non-graspability as we allow our minds seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like to tranquilly relax in the most sustainable way, as silently and mentally we recite mind, and then calm, in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation. We come to the fourth of four mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the eighth jhana's metaphoric sphere of acquiescent non-labeling. By experiencing the liberating equanimity, which is the seventh enlightenment factor, of our controlling tendencies to either push or pull. Again, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind as we breathe in, but this time we play with a new verb. As we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb free. And as I mentioned previously, our parasympathetic nervous system is wired for both physical relaxation as well as mental release. Let's play with this now. We end with Dhammasati, also known as Anika Vipassana's set of four impermanence contemplations that help us to circumstantially let go. We begin with the first of four contemplations where we invigoratingly consider coarse impermanence with the rhetorical question, where change? We continue with the second of four contemplations where this time we consider subtle impermanence with the phrase, wear, fade. We come to the third of four contemplations where this time we consider very subtle impermanence with the phrase, where, cease. We conclude with the fourth of four contemplations, where we consider relinquishing, surrendering, and letting go, with the phrase, where, yield. Let us seal this morning's meditation and contemplation with a bit of the old chanting. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and commerce flow spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window. You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could share it with a friend. You could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 2.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's mid-morning lesson and meditation. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.